Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn Cybersecurity webinar. This is the second of a two-part series that we've been hosting with our partners Node4. And just to let everyone know, the session is being recorded, and we will send that across to you at the end of the session. Any questions that you have, there is a Q&A section at the bottom. Please pop any questions there. We will answer them as we go, and if we can't, we will make sure we get them go through them all at the end of the session as well. We've also got a function at the bottom for you to raise your hand. As we go through, we may ask you some questions, just a hands up if this applies to you type of question. So please feel free to join in. Thank you. If you go to the next slide, please. So a quick run through of the plan for today. So we will be going through your users' susceptibility to phishing attacks and other cyber threats. We'll be learning about the fundamentals of phishing attacks, outlining the pillars of phishing and ransomware prevention as well. We'll also be learning about the different types of phishing emails, best practices, and how to reduce the risk of phishing and ransomware. We'll also be looking at red flags used to identify phishing emails and the most effective mitigations against phishing and ransomware attacks. And the best part about today is we'll be going through some recommendations for improving security and steps that you are able to take away with you. If you go to the next slide. A quick introduction to myself. So I lead the sales team here at Claritas, and I've been here for around 5 years now. We provide a range of IT solutions and the majority of those security solutions. And we work with clients of all shapes and sizes across the UK. I'm also delighted to introduce James at Node4. James Rental has got over 15 years experience working in this sector, and we'll be hearing more from him as the sessions go on around cybersecurity and phishing attacks in general. Next slide, please. And for those of you that haven't heard of Claritas, I know we've got a mix of clients and also new customers on here too. We've been around since 1996, and we provide businesses with a range of solutions ranging from security, hosting, bespoke software development. But whatever we do, we always have security at the heart of everything to make sure that it's all as secure as possible. Next slide, please. And here is a quick overview of some of the customers that we work with, which I think really shows that doesn't matter how big or small you are or where you're located, we do work with a range of customers. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, we're often able to help you. Next slide. And it's at this point that I can hand over to James at Node4. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, James.
Amazing. Thanks, Zoe. So yeah, I work at Node4. So we are a company that started in 2004. We started off in the data center vertical, and we've moved into managed services, and that can be on-prem and indeed in the cloud, and our own data centers are all the way up to Microsoft Azure, and we work very closely with our partners and Microsoft to offer those services. We've got around 2,000 customers. We're around 15 locations around the world. Got about 1,000 employees, and we're estimated to have turnover 185 million this year. So we've been growing by acquisition, and yeah, we work pretty closely with Microsoft, as it says, and indeed Claritas Solutions. So next slide, please. So obviously, we're covering cybercrime today, so I thought I'd start with a few statistics, much like we did last week. So some of the statistics that we've got here, we can see that cybersecurity statistics show that 43% of the cyber attacks against SME and 60% of these SMEs fall victim of a cyber attack go out of business within 6 months, which is a scary statistic to start with. It'll get less scary as we move on, I promise. We can see that there's 3.5 million vacancies in the cyber industry globally. So obviously people are looking to improve their security. What that really means is that attackers are now looking for people with low-hanging fruit, if I can put it like that. People that aren't looking to improve their security. Organizations around the world spent 150 billion on security in 2021, about 170 million last year, and that's expected to go up to about 200 billion this year. 39% of UK businesses identified a cyber attack in the past 12 months, which is a phenomenal amount. That doesn't mean to say they were ransomware. That can be anything. It can be phishing, etc. So yeah, maybe if you'd like to raise your hand if you've experienced any kind of cyber attack in the last wee while, you know, whether that's DDoS, whether that's phishing, ransomware, heaven forbid. It'd be good to see who's actually experienced that. And then, yeah, 80% of the cyber attacks could be prevented if we put some simple security controls in place. So, I mean, that's telling, isn't it? You know, we don't need to be doing much to prevent cyber attacks. So, yeah, next slide, please. So, the internet has got a fair amount of design flaws in it there. I mean, the walkway is a good one for me.
I mean, I've got to say, James, that tap is shocking.
It is absolutely shocking. The carpet looks like definitely looks like you could have a bit of an incident on that as well. So yeah, next slide, please, Josh. So how do these cyber attacks happen? Well, they happen through vulnerabilities, and we have many vulnerabilities out there. We discussed some of these last week as well. This week we're going to have a little bit more look at the ones mentioned here. So insider attack. So insider attack's an interesting one. It doesn't need to be a disgruntled employee, obviously, but it more than likely is. It can range from them accessing data, stealing that data, whether that be data around your HR, your customers, or indeed just your intellectual property. Poorly written code allows access to more than is expected, and we kind of covered this on Thursday there when we were talking about First American and our case study there, where there was a bit of poorly written code. Email and app security. So this can be from patching your browsers on your endpoints all the way to your email security. So what do you have in front of your emails? Do you have an email gateway? Do you have any AI in front of your emails? Do you put policies in that control attachments, etc.? And then what about your users? Again, we talked about disgruntled employees. Well, what about employees that maybe just aren't quite up to scratch IT-wise? They maybe can't see the signs that are out there, but they're about to experience a cyber attack by what they're doing, by their IT knowledge. Next slide, please. So what about social engineering? What is social engineering? Well, social engineering is basically using the kindness or the lack of IT skills in someone to exploit them in some way. So what's the most common of these? Well, it's phishing. It can come through many ways. So email phishing is obviously a big one that we've all heard of and we'll be covering more of, but it can go into text messages. It can go into phone calls and are just allowing people to do things. So a phone call version can be someone phones up your help desk and says, I am your director, please can you change my password for me? And someone just does that because it's the director that's supposedly phoned up. So what controls do you have around that to secure your support desk and indeed your director from having that happen? And then what about email phishing? Email phishing where people will send in emails making it either look like your domain or look like a user, i.e. a director again that is emailed in asking for something to happen. So what are the two types? Well, the two main types, whaling and spear phishing. So whaling, obviously a big fish, a mammal, but let's call it a big fish. And that can be where we're going after the whole company. So someone is mass sending out an email to everyone in your company asking for the same sort of thing. Spear phishing. Spear phishing is targeted. We're going after one fish. We're either going after someone that we know in your finance department because we found that out from your LinkedIn, or we're going after a director because we know that they're again a director. You know, the accounts department are always very susceptible to this. You know, a director phones in and says, "Oh, can you just quickly buy me 70 gift cards for Amazon because I need to hand them out to prospective clients or something," and then someone in accounts just does that, and then suddenly that money is gone. So what does phishing accomplish? Well, it can be many things, but the main ones are stealing of credentials, stealing of passwords. So an attacker can then use those credentials against a username and get into your system or systems. Extortion, so we just talked about that. And then just general theft. It can be anything. You know, it doesn't need to just be money. As I say, it can be IP as well. There's lots to consider there within the social engineering framework. So next slide, please. So last year, some of you may have heard of this. Uber got hacked, and this is our case study today, looking at how they got hacked and what happened. So user credentials were already stolen. They were already on the web, and an attacker found them. And they found a resource on the internet that they could log on to for Uber using these credentials. Uber do have some security over and above a password, and they have MFA, so multi-factor authentication, where they have a second form of authentication to allow an employee into their systems. But what this attacker did was it recognized that they had two-factor on there. And because they had the username and the password correct, they were able to log in multiple times without the account logging out. And this flooded the user with MFA requests because they were using push notification for their MFA. So the user was sat there and their phone was pinging and pinging and pinging, let me in, let me in, let me in. Now, the attacker was quite clever. They also had the phone number of the person that was there, the person that they had the credentials of. And they WhatsApped them and said, "Oh, we know that you're getting absolutely inundated with your MFA requests. Would you mind just accepting one and they will stop? Because we are your IT department and we're looking to fix the problem." So they really went deep into the social engineering. They masqueraded as their IT department. The guy saw it. He was getting really annoyed by the flood of MFA requests, and he presses OK. Fine, that stopped it. And they did stop, but it also let the attacker in. The attacker was into the Uber systems. So he is now looking to see what he can do once he's in there. You know, we talked last week about a low and slow and indexing what information was there before we could take it. Well, again, the attacker is now in. No one knows that they've authenticated properly, they've MFA'd, everything is looking great from the IT perspective. But this attacker then managed to troll the network, see what access this consultant, this person had. And while they were on there, they managed to get onto a server, and this server had a script running. And this script was actually running against their password manager's root credentials. And because he found these credentials running on the script, he was then able to log into further systems as those credentials, and he found that he was able to log into the root credentials of the password with the root credentials, into the password manager. So once he had that, he then had access to all of the passwords within the system, all of Uber's passwords, and he was able to go onto Slack, which is a instant messaging system if you haven't heard of it. He was able to access all the file shares and so on. Now, after some diligence by Uber, as you would expect, they would be all over this. They discovered that it was actually a young chap in the UK who said he was affiliated with Lapsus, who we covered last week as well. And they went in a little bit early. If you were assessing the attacker, they went in a little bit early. They vocalized that they had all this information early, rather than ransomwaring or anything like that. They just said they had the information and Uber weren't up for paying, and they went after them hard. Now, there are other things to learn from this case study that aren't here, and that is how the CISO of Uber operated in light of this attack. And he didn't actually come forth that this had happened very often, and he is now up in court for not displaying and not speaking to the police and the relevant authorities early enough and trying to hide it. So there's a thing to say there as well. What are your policies against sort of an attack? How are you going to speak to your insurers? Do you need to let the Information Commission know what data has been stolen? Have you classified your data? So there's lots to take from this. It doesn't just happen to us in the small, medium businesses. It also happens to big businesses, and everyone needs to be prepared for social engineering to occur. So next slide, please. So yeah, again, we covered this last week. We need to prepare, we need to defend, and we need to respond. So again, we're going to cover more on the preparation side here. What can we do to prepare for this? What controls can we put in to prepare for an attack happening? Because we know they're going to attack. They're going to happen. Sorry. Next slide, please. So multi-factor authentication is a fantastic method of securing your user base. Passwords we know are weak. We know for years now that they can be written on the bottom of keyboards on a post-it note. They can be password 1, 2. They can be incredibly weak. So how do you stop that from being your only line of defense? Well, you put a second factor in there. That second factor can be something you own, for example. So a phone is the most common method of doing this. But as just described in the case study we just covered, we are seeing a lot of MFA fatigue, where push notifications are getting sent to their phone, phones lighting up, everyone's seeing it on their phone and they're just pressing OK, not really putting 2 and 2 together about whether they've just logged in or whether they've been in for ages and this has just popped up and it's completely not them. So how can we stop MFA fatigue from growing into our user base? Well, there's a couple of ways. Now, the best way is to change to number codes. That's where you're having to put in a code. So we've seen it in banks for years, where you log onto your private banking there and you have to put in a little number to get yourself in. Now, what we're seeing is Microsoft are even starting to get rid of push notification within Microsoft Authenticator. They're changing to number codes. And if you use any other authenticators, we're probably starting to see that going into those as well. So if we're using Google Authenticator, or if you use Duo or any of the modern MFAs out there, they will start moving to number codes. Other options are to set up safe spaces. So I would recommend that these are offices where people have already gone through security, they've used their pass to get into your building, they've logged on to their machine within that building, they've already passed their security. So you could then set up that as a safe space so they don't need to use MFA while they're in that space. But as soon as they're out the office or out any of your locations, then they're going to have to MFA to get in. There are other options that you can go on to, whether that be biometrics or Windows Hello or passwordless or FIDO2, so little authentication chips that go in your keyring. These are all things that we can help you with moving forward to stop the MFA fatigue. So next slide, please. So yeah, more on the preparation side, what do we do about phishing? How do we get ourselves to a position where we think our users are in a position to see a fish, to see something suspicious, or as I say, to hear something suspicious on the phone? And phishing training has to be the best way of doing this. And it has to be kind of continuous throughout the year. And the reason for that is because we see so many different phishing campaigns move forward. So for the past year, a lot of the phishing campaign has certainly been around trying to send money to Ukraine to help Ukrainians in the fight against the Russians. So our training here can be tailored to that. It can cover more than email security as well, like I say. So it can be your phone security, whether that be phone calls or text messages, etc. You can vary the training, so you can cover the same sort of topics, but in a different format. So you're reiterating the training that is being pushed out there. The training should also be reportable, so you can see who in your business has actually done it. How have they got on? Have they passed the training, etc.? And what about if you can schedule the training as well, so you can do it, as I say, continuously throughout the year. And what I actually read today, something which shocked me a little bit, was an increase in phishing campaigns for people to send money to Turkey and Syria, which is a little bit sickening, I have to say, but that's the way that these guys operate. There is nothing that is out the realms of their sphere. They will target you for anything, as I say, that is going to target your kindness or your users' kindness. So the training that is on offer should make, as I say, be up to date and covering all of these topics. So next slide, please. So phishing testing. Again, maybe I'll just quickly ask, has anyone actually done any phishing testing? Maybe if you could raise your hands, that'd be great. So phishing testing, it's aimed at email security. It's where we can do, we can test modern attack vectors like I've just mentioned. We can tailor it at groups so we can see the finance users, and we can tailor one that is to the finance users, the HR users, or indeed their call centers. And these are not meant to catch out your users in that way. They're meant to catch out your users so that you can see exactly who is at risk and who is needing training. And then you can tailor your training off the back of the testing that you are doing. So the tests are reportable. You can see how successful these tests have been. So not only does it show the users that are going to need more training, it also shows if you have a gap in your security. Are there more policies that you need to put in place to defend your users? And again, they can be scheduled. So they can be scheduled at the same time as you're doing your training, just after your training. If you've just done training, can we send out a phishing test and just reiterate the fact that this is a phishing test and that users should have learned from the training that you've put out there. And when you put all these things together, you end up with a really good basis of training and getting your users up to speed on what is happening within the cyber industry. So if we go back to that 80% that we first mentioned, of cyber attacks can be stopped with a little bit of email security. We're really, cyber security. We're really starting to push that agenda to our users, because let's face it, it's not just the IT department that need to be up to date on cyber. It's our users as well. And I've run training and testing in the past. It's really got nothing to do with business, because it's good. And I think you have a bit of due diligence to help your users out for things that maybe aren't work related, but happen to people at home. Whether it be the Royal Mail text message that you get for your delivery that's coming in. I mean, it's got nothing to do with work, but it's happening all the time and it's coming to your personal phone. So it's good just to let people know that that's happening, because again, it actually helps you keeping cyber forefront of everyone's minds. So next slide, please. We're just coming to the end of my section of the webinar. So just thought I'd quickly run through our wheel again, much like we did last week. We've got penetration testing on there between that we discussed last week, the managed vulnerability scanning that we can do together with Claritas Solutions. We've got managed firewall services. We've got the SIEM, the threat detect, SOC, and the SIEM offering that we have that is really, really powerful when we start adding that in with our authentication platforms, so that we can see people that have had a lot of MFA requests within a minute. We can see people logging in from different locations, etc., or impossible log on, as we like to call it, different locations within a short time span. We've got our infrastructure security, our end user security, so AV products that we can do with you. And again, as we come on to the phishing assessments that we've just talked about, the security e-learning, which again is the phishing training of all parts. And then the two top ones there, the incident response and the security advisory team. The security advisory team very much here to help you frame your policy, frame your cyber position moving forward, to make sure you do have these security controls in place to protect and defend against any cyber attack happening. And then should it happen, the incident response. So there is a little bit of incident response that you'll be able to do yourself, but do you have the people that can help your board, speak to the press, that can speak to the attackers, maybe negotiate with them, and that's really where they come into their own. So yeah, that's me rounding up that section of the webinar. Have the next slide, please, and I think I'll pass back to Zoe.
Thanks, James. Thank you, James. That's really interesting. I actually do. I have had a question come through as well, actually, and I wasn't sure of the answer, so I thought I'd save it for you.
Oh, excellent.
I know how you love the questions. We've had Gavin ask if the phishing training can it cover instant messaging apps like WhatsApp. That's the only one that I can think of right now. So can you? I suppose what he's asking, like you send phishing emails, can you do that in instant messaging apps as well?
So we can together. Node 4 and Claritas have a solution for that. It's tailored to the customer. It's quite unique. You won't find many people doing that as a product set. It
Yeah.
does require us to have phone numbers, obviously,
Hmm.
and so on. Now, for instant messaging, it's a little bit more difficult. Don't know many people dropping into their DMs, but certainly within a text message, it's easy to do.
Yeah. Okay. I know if I get anything, I just immediately delete it, to be honest with you. If I'm not expecting it, it just goes in the bin. It's kind of
Best policy, Zoe. Best
best
policy.
policy to have. Oh, thank you. That was really, really interesting and a lot to take away there. Just to remind everyone, especially if you weren't on the last webinar as well, um, James is available and giving away 30 minutes of his time. So you can just have a bit of a consultation about what next steps you can take when it comes to your cybersecurity, because there's so much to talk through that I think it can be overwhelming at times. So if you want something that's a little more bespoke to you and your business, please let us know and we will get that arranged. Um, Josh, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And we do have another two webinars coming up on the 2nd and the 9th of March. They're with another partner of ours, Checkpoint, and continuing on the cybersecurity theme as well, which is just becoming so, well, it always has been, but it's even more important than it's ever been at the moment. So please let us know if you'd like to register for those. We will, of course, send across the recording for this one. And thank you very much again to James. It was really interesting having you on here. Thank you for everyone for joining. And I look forward to catching up with everybody soon. Thank you very much.